Well, I guess it's time for the second guest of this evening. Today we have Mr. Marco D'Souza, who loves discovering new gadgets and gizmos at Spot My Gadget. Are you ready, Marco? Come.
Welcome, Marco, to Jam with Sam.
Thank you, my pleasure.
So I hope you liked the introduction.
Absolutely, I think that's the most prolific introduction that I've got till now ever.
Great. Marco, thank you so much for coming.
My pleasure.
I think how many years do we know each other?
I think close to maybe 14 years, but in that time for 9 years we weren't in touch, I think. Absolutely.
I think we got back when we connected on Facebook.
Yeah, that's right.
Facebook.
Couple of years
Facebook
ago.
is the connector, you know. I mean,
always has been, yeah.
The connector over there. Great. So Marco, tell us something about your family.
I've been married for the last 6 years. My wife is in the banking industry. She basically is a headhunter. So she hires for the banking industry. Been in that field for the last 3 or 4 years. We live in Bandra. I grew up in Santa Cruz. I lost my dad a long time ago when I was 11. So me and my sister were pretty much raised by my mom. So she's the rock by which I hold every single standard to. She's taught us a hell of a lot along the way. So we came up the hard way, but at no point in time were we ever left wanting for anything, which is one thing which I've learned a hell of a lot in the last so many years. That through hard times, you're not supposed to show that you're having a hard time. Basically, do the best you can and live as normally as you can. So a lot to learn from there. So I did my B in electronics in '96. I passed out. Yeah, and shortly after that, I joined Chip magazine. Chip was a magazine which I sort of gravitated towards because I was a tech head from the smallest age. I used to open clocks, open TVs, VCRs. Literally, I used to open these things and leave them open. And mom and dad used to come back home and what the hell is happening over here, Because obviously I didn't know how to put it back, but I just like opening it. Anything with a circuit. So it was abundantly clear as to what I was going to do. This guy is going to be an engineer or a scientist. They didn't really think about anything else for me. And it was clear. I mean, but that path was chalked out for me, and I didn't think of doing anything else. I couldn't see myself anywhere else. When Chip was launched over here, to me, I found it was a perfect confluence of what I liked. I loved content. I still love reading and writing. And that on the one hand, and on the other hand, technology. So when I joined Chip, which was I think way back in '98,
right?
Yeah, Chip was launched in '98. I joined them when they were 6 months, 6 months into the market. It was a new concept then, an IT magazine, and it did well for itself because we broke a lot of new ground with the CD, which was sent along with the magazine, and then a DVD. So new software every month, and in those days it made a big difference because we didn't have the internet. And even for those of us who had it, it was a 56K dial-up modem. You couldn't think of getting any trial software over the internet. So we broke a lot of new ground, and a lot of stuff happened over there which pretty much changed my entire outlook and set the stage for what led me to doing what I'm doing right now. So yeah, basically that's my story from then to now.
Chip was in '98. This was part of CRN at that time?
CRN was part of the group which ran Chip as well. The JDM group and Jasubai group. Yeah.
And then I think later on it got split into Digit and...
That's right. So Chip was very interesting. As a beast, it changed hands very often in the last 10 years. One company owned it, another company liked it, and then they bought it. But through it all, I sort of followed it, or I don't know, maybe it had followed me. Because wherever Chip had moved, they basically, offered the job to me and said, hey, why don't you come on board? So Chip had moved hands, basically, yeah.
And now it's with Chip, is with which group?
It is with Infomedia 18.
Infomedia 18.
Yeah, so
that's
Web 18 group.
That's a strong brand which they have.
Right.
And I think Digit is with which?
They're with 9.9, I believe.
9.9.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of splitting.
So there's been a bit of a split.
And CRN is on its own, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Only in the IT space over there.
Yeah.
Okay. So what is the kind of work profile which you had in Chip over there? What used to enjoy doing over there in Chip?
So I joined Chip as a test center reviewer. We used to have a very small test lab. Literally maybe from that window till this desk till here.
Okay.
It was this tiny.
Okay.
3 of us used to sit over there. We used to have one small bench. And that was shared by the photo studio.
Oh.
So we had things like this in the test lab. and the one who used to shoot all the test products that we used to get. So we used to write reviews with blips going on each time the person was taking pictures. So it was a very small space that we had, and I was a test center writer reviewer. So we used to test everything from hard disk drives to laptops to various things come across the desk. And what we did back then is to formulate different test methodologies, which is one of the things that I said trained us a hell of a lot in linear thinking and trying to find out which is the best way to evaluate, which is what we did back then. Not just that, not for the sake of finding out how fast something is, which was one of the main reasons, but what need does it serve in the real world, right? So if you test a hard disk, if you test a laptop, and if it gives you 54 megabytes per second, what does it really mean? Yes. Right? So because a lot of times we tend to get lost in the jargon, we tend to get lost in our own jargon. Because we are so close to it, so we don't really see it from another point of view. So we were taught back then to sort of relate that to the real world, to an end user, to someone who doesn't know, what does this mean? Absolutely. Spell it out for me, right? So that's what we did in a lot of ways in Chip, through test reviews, through hands-on guides, how-tos, shootouts, different ways in which we got this word across. So I was a test center reviewer back then. I moved to the head of the test center, then to the head of the writing team, and I left them as the editor.
Yes. Which year did you leave them?
I left Chip in 2006.
2006.
Yeah.
When you used to work in the magazines, many times you get the pressure ki, try and promote this product. He's putting a lot of ads for us and all, so don't write a bad review for him. So has that happened to you anytime?
I was just talking about it back a little while earlier. Okay. So there's a very classic glass wall, which is, it's a glass wall in some cases, it's a brick wall in others, where guys in the test center are unbiased, they are unequivocal about how something works. So if a guy doesn't like something, if it's not up to snuff, we'll say it in as many words, this hard disk sucks, do not buy it. And if it's from someone like Samsung, who's advertising in our magazine as well, there's a classic tussle which happens. And we faced that, several times. What we learned back then, and what in fact it was a learning throughout, through all the people who worked in the magazine and the sales and marketing team, is that so long as we can stand behind what we say, so long as we can defend it to the hilt, write it. And we were blessed because the guy who ran the magazine back then, the editor, he made it abundantly clear, and he made it very, very clear that if you can stand behind what you say, nobody is going to touch you at all. And in fact, it had reached a stage where at one point in time, the sales and marketing team was banned from entering the test center. And they were good friends of ours. We used to go out and have drinks with them and all that kind of stuff. Literally, they could not cross the threshold of the test center. It was that demarcated. So we had to go outside and say hi to them and stuff like that. And they would talk to us from the outside. It was a fun thing, but that was how clear it was made that if something had to be done, it had to be done. So we did cross a lot of swords with some fairly big brands. We did, a lot of times. You'd get a call immediately after the magazine hit the stands. What do you mean by this? What do you mean by this? Why is it so low and all that? And we had all the test results, we had all the lab results in place. We used to store them all, and we used to present it. And a lot of really nice things came from there. A lot of cases, people actually saw what was wrong, and they actually changed it in the next product. And that to us was a very, very big thing. It was a huge thing for us, where a lot of brands actually came back to us saying, hey, we didn't even know about this. And in fact, not so much on the performance, but a lot of things which we used to test, we used to even test for build quality. And sometimes you have a great laptop, for example, the highest of specifications, but that one hinge at the back is not built well, and instead of using a metal screw, they're using a plastic screw, and that would weaken over time. Something as small as that, which can kill a product in the real world. Okay. Which we used to handpick that, okay, there's something wrong with this. And like I said, folks have gotten back to us saying that, hey, this is good. People have actually gotten back to us on that. So that was interesting. There was a lot of interesting things there.
So then after Chip, what did you do?
For a brief while, when I left Chip, I was with a company which was into digital marketing and content. It was a company based in Seattle. It was a dual shore operation, okay. More a KPO of sorts. So we had an office based in Seattle, one based in Bombay. Okay. So I used to look after the office, the content of the office here in Bombay. And they used to do a lot of work for Microsoft, primarily Microsoft. They used to be in fact based right opposite Redmond. and a lot of things from case studies to white papers to how-tos to technical documents to tons of stuff, tons of content. Plus, we used to build sites for Microsoft, InfoPath sites for them, SharePoint sites for their own uses. Yeah, a lot of the internal sites. We've helped them launch various things, products, and stuff like that. So it was a content firm which was largely outsourced.
Okay. And after that?
After that came Spot My Gadget. Now,
so when did you launch it? Spot My Gadget?
Spot My Gadget was officially launched in October of 2011.
2011.
Yeah, so it's just about completing a year right now. Is when we officially launched it. I started doing work on it while I was working in this company in 2009. The seed took place in May of 2009. I clearly remember that day also. Where there's a time in your life where you suddenly wake up one morning and say, hey, what the heck am I doing? I'm not in love with what I'm doing. I mean, I don't wake up full of heck, I'm gonna conquer the day. This is the day that I'm gonna make it. And that's something which had eaten at me for a long time. I used to not like what I was doing. I used to do it because it was there to do it. I mean, I used to do a good job at it, but I could be doing a whole lot of other things. And I kept having that, nagging feeling that, okay, I've come from a certain place. There's some, there's a certain place that I want to be, but I'm not at that place. So that's the point where various lights went off in my head, and they said, okay, I've been doing so much of things in the past, and I want to basically fructify all that in a package, in a certain place, in a certain path, in a career, which will take me down a certain path. So Spot My Gadget was something which I worked on more as a project to see how far I could take it for the fun of it. Let's just try this out. Let's just start it out. So that's what I did while I was, working in the company, and I used to work with a couple of close friends on weekends, build it out, mock it up on the website, check stuff out. And before I knew it, I'd gotten so deep into it, and I found that it was working so interestingly, and we had actually stumbled onto something which could be really big. That then is the point that I knew that I had to be doing this on a full-time basis. Of course, that still point of the explosion, as they say, is a very interesting fork in your life. You wake up one morning and you know that come the end of that day, I have to make a huge life-changing decision. That's the point I have to make that decision. You will make the decision that day, probably it will come to pass a few weeks or months later, but that's the point you wake up and say, I've got to talk to family about it, I've got to talk to my wife about it.
Most important.
I've got to choose to leave a paying job and dive headlong into something which might work, might not work, but which you feel will work. So yeah, so basically, fight with a lot of demons and basically, reconcile a lot of things for myself first before I could take that jump.
So then you launched it, and tell us something about what is Spot My Gadget about?
Yeah, so Spot My Gadget is something which is a melding of a lot of what I've done in the last 15 years. So one thing which I found way back then, in fact, that's the spark which had set it off, is that I found that the entire way in which people approach buying different kinds of technologies is skewed, it's wrong, right? So when I used to walk into a Croma to buy something or buy something online, the kinds of salespeople you find over there know jack all about any of these things. Really, I mean, it's so pitiful, and I mean, a lot of guys like me, the geeks in the family, were the go-to guys. Anyone who wanted to buy a laptop in the family, friends, hey Marco, what do I buy? Or this, tell me what do I buy? I want to spend so much. What's new in the market? Tell me about this. And I used to love explaining those things. I used to love helping people buy things. So I used to do it verbally, as is what any geek will do. They'll get into a long-winded thing about why this phone is better than that phone, or why I should buy this laptop versus that. So I thought, why not do something which completely automates this entire process on a platform that is scalable and universally accessible, which is where I thought about something like a Spot My Gadget. So Spot My Gadget was born as a need which needed to be fulfilled. I think that's what most entrepreneurs do. They see gaping holes in something in their sphere of existence and say, boss, that this needs to get fixed, and I will fix it, or I will try to do something which will fix it. So it's those gaping holes that you find in your life, that are very important to, first of all, accept and say that yes, there is something which needs to be fixed, and then move on to the fact that whether you can fix it or not. Can you personally fix it? Can you set together a team which can fix it? Do you know people who can fix it? And then basically, choose what you want to do from then on in. So, Spot My Gadget right now, I mean, in its form right now, is a fairly intelligent buying engine, or it's a decision engine that we built. It's a big block of code which sits on the internet, which sits on this website, which you don't see, but which at the front end, if a person goes to the website, they see a very simple set of questions. If you want to buy a laptop or a smartphone, you click on that and the site literally asks you 6 or 7 simple questions along with how much you want to spend, and based on whatever you tell the website, it suggests. Okay. So we've built a suggestion engine or a decision engine, which we think will be very scalable. It is very scalable because it's something which can be used in all kinds of geographies. All that changes is price. And very interestingly, we've even found that a lot of other firms have started to approach us saying, hey, why don't you do something like that for us? That's a need which even they need to get fixed. So we've in last month, in fact, we've just launched a service. We've recently launched a service which lets us syndicate use of the engine, of this buying engine that we've built, where we can do a custom search for sites like any of the retailers, any of the online retailers. Not just that, we've even been approached by banks, and they have said that, hey, why don't you do something like this for maybe insurance? There's so many different things in the market, insurance products. How do we lead a person towards buying the best insurance? Because what our website does, if it's burned down to its bare minimum, is that it takes many variables, thinks about it and churns it based on certain expertise and gives you results. So we could actually tune that to buying anything, to buying cars, to buying home loans, you name it. So it's a very scalable thing that we built, and we've now started seeing what its potential really is. So right now, at this point in time, we are literally at the start of the journey. We've already covered so many years, but there's a long, long way to go. We're still nowhere near the success that we see that we are going to be at, but we see a lot of really interesting things which are happening, very positive points of light which are coming in from the market, which is what is basically keeping us going.
So the funding has been done by yourself, or you got some?
Right now it's totally self-funded, and we want to stay that way for as long as we possibly can.
Okay. So you're not in favor of equity or?
No, absolutely. I think it's a very good thing. If a firm needs to scale faster than what they already are, definitely go in for equity. I mean, why wait? Why wait if you're going to cross that path, or if you're going to reach that point at some point in time eventually? So funding is definitely something which I will not say that no, absolutely don't do it. Ideally, in the best case scenario, if you can afford to, if you've got enough saved up, if you come from a place where you can fund it definitely. But if you find that you're not moving fast enough, and that's happening for a protracted period of time, then definitely look for a way in which you can cross those milestones faster. Because the fact is that right now, at least in a space like ours, in the online industry, in the software industry, ideas can be copied really quickly, and it's happening every single day. People are copying ideas really fast. So there's every chance that an idea can be copied, and before you know it, someone's beat you to the game, So definitely, I mean, that's, and the good thing is that nowadays there are so many more avenues in which you can get, funded. There's private equity, there's angel funding, so many different things, knocking on people's doors and asking family members, all the way from there to even some really interesting things like crowdfunding. A lot of really interesting sites have been set up.
About that, so much amount of money is required.
Exactly, they just pledge amount, X amount, and firms have raised huge amounts using crowdfunding. I was
reading about that watch which is there, which is what e-watch over there, and they say so much of funding is there.
Exactly, I mean they'd asked for X amount, and they I think closed at 2x of what they had asked for. I think in the millions.
The internet is helping on that.
Hugely. So there are ways, and one should be completely open to that. One shouldn't be.
How are you marketing this product? Through like social media, online media, how are you marketing this product?
So we have all the necessary check boxes ticked. So we have a Facebook page, we have a Twitter account, we have this, we have blog, this. But we've set this up. We haven't, actively gone and really used it as far as we want to. Very frankly, and I'll tell you that. We've set these things up, it's there, it's not near the potential that it has to be at. I take blame for that totally. And I think the reason is because we've been so tied up in so many other things, trying to get the actual core of the website, running well. What I firmly believe in is the fact that social media is a grossly overused term. I mean, it's what everyone says everyone should do, any firm should do. But to me, social media is a platform. It is a facilitator and nothing else, right? If one were to pull back and step back and just look at the big pictures to, how to use social media to its fullest, what I think is most important, the most important thing for any startup, any business, is create a kick-ass product first and foremost. Create something which does exactly what you want to do and more. Create something which is really fabulous, and then give something for people to talk about, for your customers to talk about, for users to talk about. You can't tell your user to, boss, talk about this, like my page, follow my Twitter account. It doesn't work that way. They have to want to talk about it. They have to want to be excited about it. So create the excitement, create that and light that spark basically. And once that kicks off, then the platform takes care of itself. And therefore, your fans grow, this grows, that grows. So I think it's important to facilitate that. And not just for a .com or for a web company, any service company, any kind of a product company. Create something which is fantastic, which does the thing, which breaks new ground. Do all those things and give your users something to talk about. Because once you create something which is talk worthy, then the entire network takes care of itself. Where you don't really need to tell people to. I mean, it totally defeats the purpose.
Exactly. So tell me something, how do you have a lot of stressful overnights and working on the products and doing stuff. How do you remain stress-free and healthy? Well, I can see you're pretty healthy. Karan, what do you say? He's healthy. He's given a go-ahead over there.
Well, the last couple of years have been, I still do work out of home. We plan to move into an office in the next couple of months. But since I've been working from home, I've pretty much had the opportunity to pace my day as I wanted. And I think it's very important to plan a person's day, and especially for a startup, for an entrepreneur. When you just start off and you start, obviously most people start working out of home, it is so important to plan your day and treat it like a normal working day. Because the minute you show up for work, literally walk to the next room at your computer in your pajamas, it's a downward spiral from there. So I literally dress up in the morning, walk to my next room where I have the entire system is set up. Treat it like a working day. You put in 3 or 4 solid hours of work in the morning, make your calls, this, that, the other. Break for lunch, take a little break and then work till whatever time, 6, 7, 8 or whatever it is. But as far as possible, I try to get as much of, physical work, in there as well. Because, in fact, like you said, we are slaves to the PC, and it's so, easy to get into a kind of a sedentary mode of, lifestyle. So I think it's important to actually chalk out that time and to keep that as something which you need to do, not something for if you have time, you'll do it. The minute you say that if I have time today, I'll go for a walk, no, it's not going to happen. You've got to say that you have to walk 5 times a week or 3 times a week or 4 times, whatever it is. So yeah, so I jog as often as I can. I work out at home. I've got a small little thing set up at home itself only, so I try to get as much of that as done as possible. Then for de-stressing, I like to drive. I love driving. So not on our roads.
In Bombay?
So it's late night, early morning, going for long drives. Music, movies. I enjoy movies. I've got a fairly interesting home theater set up. Okay. Being a geek that I am, so I've got about, I think at last count, 600 odd movies.
Okay. So remember to get my hard disk over the next time.
Which I haven't watched.
Yeah, that happens actually.
Yeah, exactly.
You just collect stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So basically, I think it's important to put in that hard work, but find things which let you de-stress. De-stressing is a very important part of it. Otherwise, the next day starts off on a bad note. It just happens.
I know. So, how big is your team?
Right now, we're a very small team. We're just 3 people at the core. And we choose to keep it that way because since we're web-based, we've literally, identified buckets of what work is, which needs to get done on the web. And since a lot of our efforts right now is to build the engine, to create all that, these 3 people are the core of the team. So we basically make all the decisions as to what are the new things we should add, what is the turnaround time when we should add a new products, etc. But we do have a larger kind of an extended team. We have a lot of freelancers who we rope in as and when we need.
For the coding and all?
For research, more for research.
Okay.
Like if you have to add a new batch of smartphones, like the new phones which have been launched in the last 1 week or 1 month, we sign on people to just do that research and add those into the website. So it's so it's more as and when we need that we bring these people on board, as well as teams who help us in our design, in UI, UX, which is very important. So we have a team which basically tests any changes that we make on the website as far as user testing goes. That is this drop down working well? Is this transition working well? Is it UI enough? Is it smooth enough? Is it human enough? All those kinds of things. So we bring in those people, as and when we need. So I think more on the larger peripheral level, we have about 15 people who are doing work on Spot My Gadget at any given time.
So you have any app for Android and for Apple?
A lot of people have actually asked us that, and we were on the verge of doing that because everybody needs to create an app nowadays. It's something which we should do, but it's not front burner right now. Right now, we are in fact going to do a relaunch of the website in about a month's time, where we are going to tool the website to run on any kind of a device, irrespective of OS and screen size and form factor. In fact, even right now, you can actually run the website on an iPad, on any other device, and it works as well, but even more so. So I think we've reached a stage right now with all the various web tools which are in place, HTML5, CSS, all these new things. You don't really need an app. You can create web apps
which you can run
using just HTML, which run in your browser, which run really well in your browser, which run full screen. So it acts like an app. So I think the trick is in using these technologies, and creating things which can run on any kind of device, platform agnostic and device agnostic.
If not this, what would you have been?
Well, it's really nothing, because I absolutely cannot think of what else I could have been. When I was in school, I used to fantasize literally about working in Intel or any of those large tech companies. I used to see myself as a guy in a white lab coat working in a lab with circuits in front of me, silicon in front of me. And I think for the longest time that was what my aim was, to work in a research-based firm and organization. But I think in a lot of ways I am doing that right now. Creating things which are new, joining dots which haven't been joined before, and seeing things come to life. So yeah, absolutely. So this is exactly what I'd be wanting to do.
So as a young first entrepreneur, what advice do you have to all these seasoned entrepreneurs out over here?
Well, I should be taking advice, and I've
been
taking advice. Yeah, absolutely. What I found, from the very little time that I've spent in this lifestyle, in this life, is that there are failures at every single stage, and these are at a daily level also at a lot of times. Not failures, but roadblocks, stumbling blocks. From someone telling you that, boss, why is this not moving fast enough? What's happening here? What's happening there? Why is this not happening? Why is that not happening? Two larger questions, larger life-threatening questions. Like you wake up in a cold sweat, and this happened very often at 3 a.m, asking what the heck is happening? Why is this not moving fast enough? And I think one of the things which was in fact even said is that one thing which I've learned is patience. You have to have a lot of patience. You can't expect things to move as fast as you are moving, because as a startup, as an entrepreneur, one is extremely lithe, right? You're a small team. You can move really quickly. You're like extremely agile. That's the way it's set up. But when you talk to larger companies to get business or for whatever, they have their own pace. And you can't expect them to move as fast as you. And very often you're saying that, boss, why isn't he picking up the phone and calling me? Why haven't I got a response to this mail that I sent in the morning? Those kinds of things. So that's, I think, a very important thing, that patience, and the fact that you just cannot say no. You just can never ever give up. You can never ever give up. I think that's one thing which, it's a cool catchphrase to say, but one lives and breathes it every single day. You have to find ways to bounce back if something happens, and look for the opportunities. And I think the third thing is keep track of the winds of change in that sense. You might start off a company down one line, but you might realize that actually this is not the path that you should be going down. You make one small tweak in what you do and what the business plan is, and what the product offering is, which could change the company go down a different path, because that's the way things are in the market, or that's a new need that needs to be fulfilled.
Correct.
So as a startup, you might have that grand dream. I mean, I've had that grand dream that this is where I see the site going, this is what it will do. Hopefully it will do that, but one has to be mindful of realities, of where it can possibly be and where it can reach in that amount of time, and so one has to make changes when the time is right. And if a change needs to be made, one has to let go of an old love in that sense, that this is what I wanted the business to do, and accept that you need to be going down a new direction.
Fantastic. Thank you, Marco, so much.
Welcome. Thank you very much.
And you can have coffee.
Thank you.
Okay, I just took a small vote of thanks. Thanks to everyone's partners. Rajan Raman, he's not come again today. He called me in the morning saying he's coming, but he didn't turn up. He's our brand guru who has created the Jam with Sam brand from scratch with just a brief hack. Nandu Bende from NSYNC. Thank you, Nandu, so much. We still couldn't play the signature tune because it's not working over there. I don't know why it's not working. So maybe next time. And Kiran Anjwani from Innovations, who's our strategic innovation partner. And the most important person, Rajan Shah, he's not here today, from Bond Graphics, who does all the post-production and the videos for us. Let's give them a big hand. Thank you everyone, and we'll catch Jam with Sam next time, September, the second week. Thank you very much.